Welcome to Monday Night Live with independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, Teresa Harper. I have a couple of hopefully fun cards for you tonight. We're going to do some alcohol marker techniques. So give me a shout and let me know when you're on. Okay, hello Lynette. How's your night going? Hopefully you're having a good night. Starting to get it a little cooled down in my studio. Let's see. Hope I'm showing up. Tonight we're going to start with a card, hello Laura, that uses the Friends Are Like Seashells bundle of products, and you'll find that in the 2021 to 2022 annual catalog. This is a distinctive stamp set, which means that the images are very detailed, and it has some coordinating dies called the Seashell dies. This die set has 6 dies, the main one being this very large scenery that also coordinates with the Seashells 3D embossing folder. So we're going to use those tonight, and I'll show you how they work in case you don't know. And I'm going to do a little bit of alcohol marker technique. Hello Cynthia, welcome. Hello Tracy. Gosh, thanks everyone for joining. And thank you for commenting and letting me know that you're here. I'm going to do something I don't normally do. I'm going to go ahead and show you the card that we're going to be making tonight. This is the card right here. And I'll show you some techniques on how to make this happen. I was very pleased with the way it turned out. So all right, let's go ahead and get started. Our card base is a piece of balmy blue, and this is a standard A2 card size. It's cut at 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start with our card base, and we're going to take the little stamp, this one that looks a little bit like dots of sand, and we're going to get our balmy blue ink, and we're just going to randomly stamp that around our edge. Turn my paper as I go, stamping off on full strength. All right, so there's our card base, and we can set that aside. And then we'll move on to our alcohol technique, because that's going to take a little bit of time to dry. Okay, so we're going to start with a piece of vellum cardstock. And this is a quarter sheet, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Excuse me. And we are going to take our alcohol Stampin' blends. And this is our color palette. So you need to use, and dark seaside spray is retired, but if you have another blue, you could use that. A misty moonlight, maybe, if you wanted a darker blue. And I'm going to start with, I'm going to go light to dark. So I'm going to start with my dark pool party. Actually, I should have turned these the other way. Because I'm going to use the brush tips. Let's just get those all ready to go. And then I'm just going to scribble. In the different areas. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Let's put some down. I'm going to move on to my balmy blue. Put some blue here and there. And I'm going to put in my dark seaside spray. And then I'm going to take my light, or my light native navy. The rest of them are all the darks, but this one comes out pretty dark if you use the dark. I'm just scribbling, trying to fill in those white areas. Okay, there we are. Now, I just have a container of 91% isopropyl alcohol. You have to have at least 90% or this technique won't work. I started doing this technique last night late, and I forgot and started with the 70% alcohol, and it was a disaster. It did not work at all. So you have to have at least 90. I have 91%. You can just get it at any drugstore. And I've poured some into a little container. And I am actually going to set my piece of vellum on an old towel. You can do it on regular paper, but I really want to protect my surface, so I'm going to use the towel. Okay, I want to get this down where you can see it. Okay, so there we are. We're good. All right. So then I'm going to take just an old aqua painter, and it doesn't even need to have anything in it because we're not going to use that part. I'm just going to take and dip my tip into some alcohol, and I'm just going to dot it around, splash it. And you can see how the alcohol is reacting. Okay? And that's what you want. Just going to dot that around, and that will get some moving. Then I'm going to take my tip, and it's wet, and I'm just going to dab a little bit. And then I'm going to wipe it off. I'm just going to dab into the same color. Right now I'm doing the pool party, so I don't want to muddy my colors. Anywhere I didn't see that the alcohol reacted with the ink the way I wanted yet is what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to do this kind of slowly so that I can see. Is there an echo? Okay, so I'm just going to dab a little bit here. And I'm trying to stay with the same color so I don't muddy it. Okay, are we good, Cynthia? Okay, can somebody give me a thumbs up if the sound is good? Okay, let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you, Lynette. All right, so I see some spaces where I don't have some color, so I can still go back and I can add that in. And then I'm gonna drop a little bit more alcohol on there. There we go, that's moving. All right, now I see this pool party got a little bit light on me for what I'd like, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna scribble some more pool party in some areas. And then I'll go back. Just put a little bit of alcohol in there to get that moving. And there we are. Okay. So the next step is I'm going to put in those big drops and I dabbed. Now I'm going to take my marker and my aqua painter with some alcohol on it, and I'm just going to smack my aqua painter against the barrel of my marker, and you can see how that is reacting. Okay? Now I would like just a little bit more color up here. Okay. All right, now I can set this aside to dry, because we're done with that. Okay. And I prepared one ahead of time, so it's all ready to go for the next step. So we're going to take this. This uses the exact same colors. And now I'm going to take a little bit of Versamark ink after I run my embossing buddy. Okay, where did I put my embossing tray? Is hiding behind my project kit here. So take my embossing buddy. And you can, if you don't have an embossing buddy, you can use a dryer sheet. Or you can find these on Amazon. And that'll just take some of the static away from where I want to do my embossing. So I'm just going to take a little block, and I'm going to take some Versamark ink. And I'm just going to put a drop on here. I won't need a bunch. Then I'm going to take an old blender pen that actually was dry. And I'm just going to get that a little bit wet on the tip. And then I'm going to take my blender pen and I'm going to run it along the edges of some of these seams. Where the alcohol made these marks. And I want to make sure that I use the very tip because I don't want my marks to be super wide. How are we doing for lighting? I need to turn a light on. There's so much shadow. Here we go. Hopefully that's better. Okay. I'm just gonna draw along here. Okay, and then you probably can't see it, but I'll just pick it up and tip it and see if it's got enough of what I'm looking for there. And because that Versamark is a sticky ink, I don't have to work too quickly. Okay, let's go with that and see how we like it. We can always go back and add more. Okay? And I'll just keep this one blender pen with my Versamark ink so that I only use it for that. Alright, so because this is a sticky ink, I want to clean this off pretty quickly. And I'm just going to do that with my chamois. Okay. Then I'm going to grab my heat and stick powder. And this is in the annual catalog. And then I'm going to pour that over the ink. That I just put on there. Okay, and now you should be able to see where I ran those lines if you couldn't see it before. Okay, I'm just going to give that a little tap, get the excess off, and then I'm going to move this out of my way. And I'm going to grab my heat tool. And because I'm doing this on vellum, I'm going to use our heat tool. The Stampin' Up! Heat tool has 2 settings, so I'm going to use setting number 1. And with heat and stick powder, you need to be very quick. So it's white now, and as soon as you see it start turn clear, then you need to stop. Otherwise, you'll lose your stickiness. So hopefully you can see that. Going from white to clear. And I just keep moving. As soon as it turns clear, I'm away from it. Okay, and that all looks good. All right. So now we're going to take the gilded leafing, and I need to get a piece of scrap paper here. And I have a little container that I'm going to work in. Let me turn off my fan real quick, you guys. Otherwise, I'm going to have gilded leafing everywhere because this stuff is really light. So I'm just going to take and put this into my tub. And you can see how light and airy that is. So I'm just going to take and tap that down into the sticky. And this is a full container. You can see how much you get. It doesn't take very much. I'm just going to put that on there. You got to be careful when you open it because it will go everywhere. Okay. I'm just going to take and rub this on our heat and stick powder. Push it in. Grab a little bit more so it'll stick along this edge here. And I'm going to try not to breathe too hard. I would suggest that you get a bigger container than what I have. When I originally did this, I thought, oh, that'll fit a card size. But it really doesn't give you a lot of room to work. This container, and you can just keep picking up your pieces. And you literally just want to rub them into your heat and stick powder. Okay. See if we have any sticky spots. Just work it in. Okay. I'm just going to take and brush off the excess. And this is what we're left with. Okay, I'll put all that back in here. And to clean up my area, I'm just going to take a little piece of Swiffer and wipe that up. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing on my vellum. That will get any excess off that I don't want. Okay, then we'll put that lid on tight. And put this lid on. All right. And there we are. So here is our finished piece. And if you would like to have more gold than that, you can go back and add that if you like. Okay, so we're going to take this piece and we're going to cut it with the large seashell die. We're just going to run that through the Big Shot just like this. Just going to lay that on. Put my top plate on, and then I can run this through. I've got my Big Shot right over here. Or my Stampin' Cut and Emboss, I should say. All right. So now, this is what I have left. I have this beautiful piece. Okay. I gotta get this cleaned off. Because now we're gonna take this piece and we're gonna put this back into the cut and emboss, but we're gonna take our Seashells 3D embossing folder and we're going to line this up in here. Just like so. Okay, get those all lined up. And then I'm going to close the folder. And I'm going to get my embossing plate. And I'm going to run that through the Stampin' Cut and Emboss. And then we have this beautiful piece. Okay, but this is kind of hard to see, so we want this to pop. And in order to get this to pop, you're going to take a 1/4 sheet of basic white cardstock, and you're going to run that through with the Seaside die that you just used. This one. Okay, same size sheet as your vellum, and then you're going to get this. And then we are going to take this and add these two together so that that will really stand out. Okay? You know, so to stick that, I'm going to take a piece of a sponge and some Tombow liquid adhesive. Actually, I'm going to use this one that I already dirtied up with this same technique earlier. And I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to put a little bit of Tombow adhesive in the corner here on my mat. And I'm going to take my sponge I'm going to swirl that around, and then I'm just going to put that on top of my die cut piece. I don't have to have every single area covered. Okay, so that should work. And we can put that away. And then we're going to take this and add it to our white cardstock. We're just going to line those areas up. Press them into place. And I'm pressing very gently in case I need to move. I don't want to give it a good hard press until I'm ready to secure it down. Okay, and that looks good to me. So then I'm going to go on the back, and I'm just going to give that a good press. Okay, and there you have it. Then we're going to take our card base and actually I'm going to go in on this card base with that spotted in stamp in the balmy blue, and I'm going to do a little bit more stamping inside. Okay, that'll give that just a little bit of added texture on the inside as well. Okay, so now we're ready to adhere this to our card. So again, I'm going to take some liquid glue. I'm just going to go into these bigger areas. Put a little bit on these wispies. You don't need a lot. If you can see it, it's enough. And you don't have to hit every single little piece. Just make sure you get the outside edges there. Okay. That looks good. And now we're gonna just lay this down on our card. And now that really pops. We've got all those gold accents. Okay. And you're going to take a scrap of Night of Navy, and you're going to use the Tasteful Labels die, and you're going to cut this piece for a frame, and I've already done that. And then you're going to take, we're going to do some stamping. Okay, so we've got our label. I'm going to take a piece of basic white, gonna grab some ink pads. I'm gonna go ahead and open these up. Get my alcohol markers out of the way. Pool party. Move this. And we've got some Night of Navy. Okay. Along with that balmy blue. So this is our color palette. So we need to take the sentiment from the Friends Are Like Seashells that says happy birthday to my beautiful friend, and we're going to stamp that in balmy blue. Okay, I'm going to stamp that just in the center. Doesn't matter because we're going to cut that out. We just need to make sure that we've left ourselves enough room for the die cut. Okay, this is how it's going to go, so we're good. Now our other images we'll want to put above that. So we're going to take the seashell. We're going to do this in Sahara sand. As long as I stay in that area, I'll be good now. Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to take the sand dollar. I'm going to stamp that down. And then we're going to stamp the starfish. All right. So we've got those three images. Now, from the Painted Poppy stamp set, I'm using this little splotch. It is also a distinctive stamp set. And I'm going to ink this up in the Sahara sand. And I'm going to stamp it off. And then I'm going to stamp my sand dollar. And now my sand dollar is colored. Okay? So then I'm going to take from the Friends Are Like Seashells, there's this little sploochy thing. And we're going to ink this in Pool Party. And then I'm going to stamp this off, and I'm going to stamp it off again. And I'm going to line it up with this seashell, and I'm going to stamp that down. Okay? While we're here, we're going to go ahead and stamp our inside and our envelope. So we're going to grab this seashell again, ink that up. I'm going to take the splooshy, stamp off and stamp off. And then I'm going to stamp that down on my envelope. Okay. Then I will need a mask. And I've already cut one of those. I'm going to mask that up, and I'm going to take my sand dollar and I'm going to ink that right there. And leaving my mask in place, I'm going to go back with the splooshy from the Painted Poppies. And I'm going to stamp that off. And I'm going to stamp that down. Okay. And then, I need to get my thing moved out of the way. Got all that gunk from the Tombow glue on my silicone mat. Okay, there we go. Then we're going to take the spotty stamp again. We're going to clean that off real fast if I can figure out what I did with my Where did I put that down at? Oh my goodness. Right here. Oh, thanks for the likes. Oh, thanks, Laura. I'm glad you like that technique. Okay, so I've taken the spotty stamp and I'm going to put it in the Sahara sand. And I'm just going to put some ink down here, just like that. Then I can go ahead and remove my mask. And that's done. And I did the same thing. I did the inside of the card already, but I used this same technique for the inside of the card. Okay, so we have one last image that needs to be filled in. And we're going to do that with the Balmy Blue. And there's another little splooshy stamp right here in the Friends Are Like Seashells, and I'm going to ink that up in the Balmy Blue. And again, I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm just going to give that a little bit. Okay, so this is all done. I'm going to close up those ink pads. And move those out of the way. And then we're going to need to cut those. Okay? So these three images all have dies. This one does not have a die. You can cut it out with the large seashell, but it's more trouble that way because it doesn't cut it completely. So I'm just going to take my paper snips and I'm going to cut that out. Just going to fussy cut it. Okay. It's a pretty easy image to fussy cut. Just leaving a little tiny bit of a white border. That'll draw your eye away so you won't see how good I cut or how badly I cut. And I'm going to take this image and I'm going to take this seashell 3D folder, and on the top of this, so here's the Stampin' Up! Logo. I'm just going to set that into the top like so. Now, I had trouble keeping mine in place. It didn't want to stay. I got it in there, and by the time I ran it through the machine, it didn't want to stay. So I just took a piece of Post-it tape, and now it won't move. And then I can run it through the die cut machine. Okay. And then this is the image that we have. So now it's cut, stamped, and embossed. Just like that. Right? Now these ones I've already die cut. Although I did want to show you a little trick with this one. So let me run this through the die cut machine really quickly. Because I wanted to show you how I gave this one some depth and dimension. Now you do have to, this one does have a definite way it needs to go. And one of these days I'll get my mark so I find it the first time. Okay, and we'll get the top plate and we'll run that through. All right. Okay. So I've already pre-cut those others. So we don't need to worry about those. Put that die away. I'm going to take my Stampin' Pierce mat with this. And I'm going to take my stylus tool. For my Simply Scored. And there's 2 tips. Okay. And on the front side of this, I'm going to gently go along these the seams or the markings here in the center. Okay. Just going to run that along there. I'm doing it gently. Okay, then I'm going to flip this over. Now I have it marked. I'm going to take the bigger tip because now I know right where to go. And I'm going to run those through this way, and I'm going to push a little bit harder. And that one wants to keep moving on me. Okay. And I'm just going to move along those lines I made. Okay, and then when I turn this back over, my Starfish has quite a bit of depth and dimension. Okay. So we have that piece. Now let's go ahead and grab our other pieces that I've already die cut here. All right. And these are what we need to finish putting our card together. All right. So here we go. First of all, we're going to take and add this sentiment piece to our die cut, and we're going to do that with some Stampin' Dimensionals. And I'm going to keep my Stampin' Dimensionals away from the left end. Okay. Because I need to be able to tuck some things under there. I'm going to add this to the center here. About like so. And then I'm going to add this piece to my card base. And I'm just going to add that with some liquid glue. I'm going to put it just a little bit to the right. Now I'm going to look to see where I have all the gilded leafing and determine exactly where I want this to go. So I'm covering up the least amount. Okay, so I'm going to put this about right here. I'm going to press that down. Okay. I'm going to take my Starfish, or my Sand Dollar, and I'm going to tuck him in here. And he's going to pop up just a little. So I'm going to take a Stampin' Dimensional. I'm going to add that to this edge. And I'm going to slide that on in. Okay. Oops, I think I put it on the wrong side from what I really wanted. Okay. All right, so I want this part sticking out, so I need to put my dimensional over here. No, I did it wrong again. Silly me. You'd think I'd get it right after I messed it up the first time. I want to put my Stampin' Dimensional where that little hook is. Okay. Oops. Okay, so then I can just put this in here like this. I'm going to add this seashell here, and the starfish is going to go right up here, like so. Okay. So for the starfish, I'm going to use some mini dimensionals, and I'm going to cut those in half. And I'm going to stick that on 2 of the legs. Okay. And then I'm going to put just a touch of glue on these 2 because they're going to lay up against the sentiment strip like so. Okay. Then I need a dimensional down here on this seashell. And I might want another one right there. And that finishes off my dimensional strip. Yoo-hoo! Okay, then I'm going to put just a little bit of glue up here on the top and stick that to my sentiment strip. And I don't want to cover up my sentiment. All right. Now, for the finishing touch on this, we're going to grab some of the opal rounds. And we're going to add just a couple of these, about 3. I'm going to take one big one. I'll put that up here. And then a small one. We'll stick that right in there. And then one more small one. I think right down here. Okay. And then here's that inside of our card that I did using that same technique on the envelope. Add that to the inside of our card. And now our card is finished with a coordinating envelope. All right. So what do you ladies think of that? Let me put that down a little bit so you can see it better while I give a quick clean. Okay. I have another card prepared if you are interested in hanging around, or we can save it for another night. Tell me what you would like. This one was kind of technique intensive, so it took a little bit of extra time. Oh, thanks, Tracy. Thanks, Laura. Glad you gals like that. those things back in their box. Get them out of the way. All right. Okay, our second card, I've done quite a bit of the work ahead of time. So we can just breeze through putting it together if you like. Okay. All right. So I've pre-colored everything so you won't have to watch me color. We're going to start with a card base in Soft Succulent. We are using the Stamp and Die Bundle Snow Wonder for this card. And this was available in the August to December mini last year in 2020. And it is coming back as a fan fave in the July to December mini catalog 2021. So it still will be available, and it is still available as a bundle. Okay, so that's the stamp set we're going to be using. We've got a piece of Evening Evergreen, and I've cut this with the largest of the scallop contour dies. Okay. I've also cut a piece of Whisper White, which I've already stamped and colored for the inside of our card. Okay, so this will be the inside. And then you're going to need a piece of Whisper White, and that's just to stamp on. Okay, so let's go ahead, put this up here. Okay. Oh, you also need a piece of Whisper White that is cut at, and I hope I cut this already, 3 3/8. Yep, 3 3/8 by 4 11/16. Now, you can cut this at 4 3/4, but I find that I like it to be at 4 11/16, which is just one tick mark below 4 3/4 on your trimmer. Okay, so this will fit then very nicely inside your Evening Evergreen scallop piece. Okay, if you cut it at the 4 3/4, you'll have just a little less hanging over at the top and bottom than you will on the sides. So it's your preference. So let's set that aside because we're going to go ahead and do our stamping. So we're going to take the trees, the evergreen trees, and we're going to stamp those in Evening Evergreen. Okay, we're going to do some stamping off and full strength. So I'm going to start with my trees, and I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm going to start up here in the upper left corner, and I'm going to stamp those. And then I'm going to ink again, and I'm going to stamp off, and I'm going to move those down just a touch, and I'm going to stamp again. All right? And then one last time, I'm going to stamp here. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. I wanted to... No, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to get this, and I'm going to go full strength, and I'm going to stamp right here between the trees. Right there. Full strength. Okay? That's what I have. Now, on a scrap piece of Whisper White, or basic white, okay, I'm going to stamp two more trees sets. And then I'm going to die cut those out. Okay? And then I need to stamp my snowman. I'm going to stamp my snowman in basic gray. Now this, because this is a distinctive set, it's when you ink it up, you're going to see areas that are darker than others, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Okay, and then we're just going to stamp this down. All right. Then I'm going to use our Stampin' Blends to color that up. I've already done the coloring, but I did want to show you how I did the scarf on the snowman. This is how I colored him up. But I want to show you how I did that. So I took my light and dark cherry cobbler, and I started with the dark. And I'm going to use my silicone mat, because then it'll stay wet a little longer. And I'm going to take the bullet tip, and I'm just going to do dots of cherry cobbler in these little stitches on the scarf. I'm just going to go down like that. Okay. All right. Then I'm going to go back with my light cherry cobbler. And I'm just going to dot all over my scarf with the tip. I don't want to really rub those darker spots out because I want it to look like the light is hitting the knitted area and giving it depth and dimension. It also makes it look a little bit more realistic, like it truly is fabric or yarn. Okay. Okay, so that's how I did the scarf. And here is my finished snowman, complete with Wink of Stella. I used soft suede for the branches. I put a little bit of pool party. Oh, and I was going to show you that too. With my pool party, I went around just the artist areas, and I went in the same direction. I just did some little slash marks in the same fashion that the artist did it. And I made sure that I kept turning my paper so that I was going in the same direction as the artistic marks. Okay? And that's how I got the snowman body done. And then I went back and I took my colorless lifter so that the pool party wasn't quite as dark. All right? Are there any other questions on the coloring? Okay. Okay, one more tip on the trees. I wanted to put Wink of Stella on my trees, but if you put Wink of Stella on your trees, typically your ink will run. okay? So I want the Wink of Stella on here, but I don't want my green to run into my snow. So I'm going to take my Wink of Stella, and instead of coloring with it, I'm going to dab, trying to stay in the snow area. Okay, and I'm going to wipe off my tip frequently just in case I get any green. It also helps if you stamp and really let your ink dry. And then you can get your snow to glisten. Just dabbing. We're not painting, we're just dabbing, okay? And then I'm sure you won't be able to see that in the light, but you have just a little bit of sparkle on there, okay? And I've done that on the trees that I stamped and die cut out. We can move these items out of the way. We're going to add this card piece right here. We're going to add this to our scallop contour. Here we go. Put this down right in here. Center that up. All right. And then we'll take our trees. Now here, I only want one tree. So I'm going to take my paper snips. Except I didn't put them back where they belong. And I'm just going to cut this off. I just want the big tree. So I'm just going to give that a little trim. These are not my favorite scissors by any means. Okay. I just have my paper snips, and do you think I can find them? No. Okay. So I'm going to take and put this tree here and this one here, I think. I'm going to audition this. And before I do anything else, I'm going to take my sentiment and stamp it down here in the corner. And this sentiment comes from a new stamp set called Joyful Life. And I'm using the Season's Greetings. This will be available in the July to December mini, going live to customers on October 4th. It was the best sentiment that I could put down there in that small little area. So I'm going to take and ink that up in Cherry Cobbler. And I'm going to stamp that right down here, hopefully straight. All right. Okay, then I can take my trees, take a little bit of liquid glue, put those here, take a little bit of liquid glue on the bottom of this. I'm leaving the tops unglued so that I get a little bit of added dimension. Then I'm going to take my snowman I'm going to pop that up with dimensionals. And I'm not going to put any dimensionals on his head. So I've already got some tree depth there. So I'm just going to leave that hanging. Put my snowman back on here. Come on. That up a little bit. All right, and then we're ready to add this to our card base. And our card base is a standard A2 card base, 5.5 by 8.5, scored up 4 1/4. And we're gonna take some Stampin' Seal and add this to the front. I love how the soft succulent complements the evening evergreen so beautifully. Okay, so then for the inside, I took the stamp. This stamp is also in that Snow Wonder. And this greeting is in there. So I took and colored this with soft succulent, a little bit of flirty flamingo, and the light and dark cherry cobbler. Okay. And we're going to add that to the inside of our card. And then this card is finished. And for the envelope, I took those snow-covered trees and stamped them on the front. And then on the flap, there's a trio of snowflakes that's also in the Snow Wonder set, and I put those on the flap. So there we have it. Those are our projects for tonight. I'll bring this first card back in so you can see that again. All right. Hope everybody was inspired by that. And hopefully you'll be able to create something of your own with something similar that you might have. All right, thank you. His hat, oh, the color of his hat, Tracy, I used 3 colors. I colored with light and dark smoky slate and a little bit of basic black. Oh, this is evening evergreen. So these are the ones that I used to get that blend. For the hat. Aw, thanks, Tracy. I appreciate that. All right, everybody. Well, I will see you back here again, hopefully, next Monday night. I'm making another trip to the ophthalmologist tomorrow, so we'll see how things go and where I'm going to be. Things are a little up in the air until I get this eye thing sorted out. Okay? But if I'm not going to be here, I'll let you know. If you don't hear differently, plan on next Monday night at 7:45. Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining me.